The massive crystal ship hung in space like a frozen mountain, its surface gleaming with deadly light. Inside the command center, Admiral Zekthal studied the floating displays that showed the latest battle results. His crystalline body pulsed with satisfaction as he read the numbers. 3 entire enemy fleets destroyed in less than 6 hours. Not one Kethmoran ship lost. "The Liberation Front grows weaker," reported his second-in-command, her voice ringing like struck glass. "Their newest attack was their most desperate yet." Zekthal nodded slowly. For 3,000 years, the Kethmoran Empire had ruled every corner of the galaxy. Their energy weapons could crack planets in half. Their shields could stop any attack. Hundreds of alien species bowed before their power, and those who refused were turned to Ashdot far away from the crystal ship. Commander Grixon sat in his damaged command chair aboard the Liberation Front vessel Hope's End. His thick shell was cracked from the last battle, and green blood still oozed from his wounds. Around him, the surviving ship captains appeared as flickering blue images on the communication screens. 12,000 ships, Grixon said, his voice heavy with pain. "We lost 12,000 ships today. The Kethmoran didn't even scratch their paint." Captain Velinara of the Zafani floated in her display, her ghostly form trembling. "My people are dying. Whole worlds turned to glass. Maybe we should surrender while some of us are still alive." "No." Grixon slammed his fist on the control panel, making sparks fly. "We fought too long to give up now. Has to be a way to beat them." The other captains shared looks of despair. They had tried everything: energy weapons, plasma bombs, nuclear, missiles, even ramming their ships into Kethmoran vessels. Nothing worked. The crystal ships absorbed every attack and fired back with weapons that turned entire fleets into glowing dust. Suddenly, the communications officer jumped in his seat. "Sir, we're getting a signal from the outer rim. Unknown ship approaching." "It on screen?" Grixon ordered. The main display flickered and showed a face that looked almost familiar, yet completely strange. The being had 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth like many humanoid species, but something was different. The eyes held a cold intelligence that made Grixon's skin crawl. "Liberation Front Command. This is Captain Juon of the Terran Expeditionary Force," the strange being said. "We've been watching your war with the Kethmoran Empire. We want to help you." Grixon blinked in confusion. "Terran? I've never heard of your people. We call ourselves humans. We come from a planet called Earth. It's very far from here, beyond your star maps. We've been studying your enemy for some time, Captain." Velinara's ghostly form leaned forward. "Could you possibly do that? We haven't tried." "We have the combined military might of 200 species. Kethmoran still destroy us like insects." Captain Juwan's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "We have experience fighting enemies who are stronger than us. Sometimes winning isn't about having better weapons. Sometimes it's about wanting victory more than your enemy wants to live." The alien commanders fell silent. There was something in the human's voice that made them uncomfortable, though they couldn't explain why. "Are your ships?" observed Captain. "Telmar of the insectoid hive worlds, they look primitive. Chemical rockets, metal hulls. We abandoned such technology thousands of years ago." "Sometimes old ways are better ways," Juon replied calmly. "Our weapons are simple too. We shoot metal bullets very fast. No energy beams, no plasma fields. Just pieces of metal moving at high speed." Grixon's translator made confused noises. "Captain, the Kethmoran shields can stop our most powerful energy weapons. How do you expect simple bullets to hurt them?" "For the first time," Captain Juon smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Would you like us to show you?" The meeting lasted another hour, but Grixon found himself staring at the human captain's face. There was something wrong about these new allies, something that made his warrior instincts scream warnings. The humans spoke of war like other species spoke of their favorite food. They talked about fighting superior enemies like it was fun. When the transmission ended, Grixon sat alone in his command chair, thinking the Liberation Front was desperate. They had lost almost everything in their fight against the Kethmoran Empire. These humans offered hope, but But hope often came with a price, Sir asked his communications officer. Should we accept their help? Grixon looked at the stars outside his ship. Somewhere out there, Kethmoran fleets were preparing to destroy more worlds. His people were dying. His allies were ready to surrender. Maybe these strange humans with their cold eyes and primitive weapons could make a difference. Send them coordinates for a joint operation, he ordered. Let's see what these humans can do. As the message went out, Grixon couldn't shake the feeling that he was making a terrible mistake. The humans had offered to help them fight monsters. But what if the humans were monsters too? The meeting ship floated in empty space between two dying stars. Commander Grixon watched through his viewport as a small, ugly vessel approached. The human ship looked like it was built from scrap metal and held together with hope. Beside it, the Liberation Front's warships looked like works of art. That's their diplomatic shuttle? Asked Lieutenant Keldon, his tentacles twitching with disbelief. It looks like a flying garbage can. Grixon said nothing, but he was thinking the same thing. How could beings with such primitive technology possibly help them defeat an empire that ruled the galaxy? The humans came aboard through the docking tube. Captain Jiwan walked first, followed by 4 other humans. They wore simple gray uniforms and carried basic equipment. No energy shields, no plasma weapons, just metal devices that looked ancient. Welcome aboard, Grixon said, trying to be polite. I am Commander Grixon of the Liberation Front. Captain Jiwan bowed slightly. Thank you for meeting with us. This is Lieutenant Hannah, my weapons expert. Sergeant Minho leads our ground forces. Dr. June studies alien psychology, and Private Dojan is our communications specialist. Grixon studied each human carefully. They all had the same cold, calculating eyes. Even when they smiled, their eyes stayed watchful and dangerous. The meeting room held representatives from 12 different species. The Zephany floated in there. Energy forms. The Veltar stood tall with their thick armor plating. The insectoid hive minds clicked and buzzed. All of them stared at the humans with curiosity and barely hidden contempt. Let's see your weapons, said Captain Telmar of the Hive Worlds. Show us what makes you think you can succeed where we have failed. Lieutenant Hannah placed a rectangular object on the table. It was made of black metal and looked completely ordinary. This is our standard infantry rifle. It fires metal projectiles at high velocity. The alien commanders leaned forward, expecting to see advanced technology. Instead, they saw what looked like a club made of metal. That's it? Asked Captain Velinara, her ghostly form shimmering with disbelief. You want to fight energy shields with metal bullets? Metal bullets work, Hannah replied calmly. They're simple, reliable, and cheap to make. Energy weapons are complex. When they break, you need special parts to fix them. When this breaks, you hit it with a hammer. Commander Grixon felt his patience running out. Lieutenant, with respect, the Kethmoran energy shields can stop our most powerful plasma cannons. Your primitive bullets will just bounce off. Something flickered in Lieutenant Hannah's eyes. Would you like to test that theory? Before anyone could answer, alarms began screaming throughout the ship. The communications officer shouted over the noise, Kethmoran patrol. 3 ships coming out of hyperspace. The meeting room erupted in panic. 12 species began talking at once, their translators creating a wall of confused noise. The humans didn't move. They sat quietly watching the chaos with mild interest. We need to run, Grixon declared. This is a diplomatic vessel. We have no weapons. Actually, said Sergeant Minho, speaking for the first time, this might be perfect. A small test. Grixon stared at the human soldier. Test. Those are Kethmoran warships. They'll destroy us in minutes. Only if we let them, Minho replied. Captain, request permission to engage the enemy. The alien commanders looked at each other in shock. The humans wanted to fight 3 Kethmoran warships with nothing but metal bullets and an attitude. You're insane, whispered Captain Velinara. We're practical, corrected Captain Jiwan. Commander Grixon, do you have a shuttle bay? 10 minutes later, Grixon watched his tactical display in amazement. The Kethmoran ships had surrounded the diplomatic vessel and were demanding surrender. Standard procedure. But instead of surrendering, a single human shuttle had launched. From the bay, one shuttle against 3 warships, muttered Lieutenant Keldon. Hey, the humans are brave, but this is suicide. The Kethmoran commander's voice came over the communication system. Unknown vessel. Return to your ship immediately or be destroyed. Sergeant Minho's voice replied from the shuttle. Negative. We're coming to visit. What happened next broke every rule of space warfare that the Liberation Front had ever learned. The human shuttle didn't try to run or hide. It flew straight at the nearest Kethmoran ship, firing its primitive weapons directly into the energy shields. The bullets should have bounced off harmlessly. Instead, they punched through the shields like they weren't there and started tearing holes in the crystal hull. Impossible, breathed Commander Grixon. Their shields can stop anything. Apparently not everything, said Captain G1 calmly. The Kethmoran ships began firing back with their energy weapons. Bright beams that could melt mountains struck the human shuttle again and again. The small vessel should have been vaporized instantly. It kept flying and kept shooting. Hull breach on the shuttle, reported the sensor officer. Life support failing. The humans should be dead. But Sergeant Minho's voice still came over the radio, and now he was laughing. I'm actually laughing as his ship burned around him. This is fun. Doyan, try the missiles. The Liberation Front commanders watched in horrified fascination as the damaged human shuttle destroyed all 3 Kethmoran warships. When it finally limped back to the diplomatic vessel, smoke was pouring from every hole in its hull. Sergeant Minho climbed out of the wreckage. His uniform burned and his face bloody. He was still smiling. Good test, he told Captain Juwan. The bullets work fine. Next time we should bring bigger guns. Commander Grixon stared at the humans, finally understanding what made them different. They weren't just warriors. They were predators who enjoyed the hunt. 6 months after first contact, the Liberation Front was winning battles for the first time in centuries. But the victories came with a price that made many alien commanders question what they had unleashed. Chief Engineer Yuna sat in the Veltar Weapons Laboratory, surrounded by confused alien scientists. On the table between them lay a captured Kethmoran plasma rifle, its crystal components glowing with deadly energy. The weapon had remained unchanged for thousands of years, perfected by an ancient civilization. The power flow is inefficient, Yuna explained, pointing at internal components with her small human hands. You're losing energy here, and here. The heat buildup reduces firing capacity by 30%. Engineer Kolvex, a massive Veltar with thick armor plating, stared at the human in disbelief. This weapon was created by beings who conquered the galaxy. How can a primitive species like yours find flaws that we missed? Yuna shrugged, a gesture that the translator couldn't properly convert. Maybe that's the problem. You think it's perfect, so you never tried to make it better? We always assume everything can be improved. She pulled out a small metal device and began modifying the weapon's internal structure. The alien engineers watched in fascination as she bypassed safety systems, rerouted power flows, and added cooling. Elements made from scrap metal? Test it now, she said, handing the modified weapon back to Kolvex. The Veltar engineer fired the rifle at a test target. The beam was 40% stronger than before and didn't overheat after continuous firing. The alien scientists looked at each other in shock. Their most advanced weapon had just been improved by a being using primitive tools. How did you know to do that? Asked Kolvex. Because I'm not afraid to break things, Yuna replied. Fear. A failure stops progress. We learned that lesson a long time ago. Meanwhile, on the training station Nexus 7, Colonel Sungjin was teaching Liberation Front Marines how to fight like humans. The lesson was not going well. Pain is information. He explained to a group of Zephany warriors who had fallen down after receiving minor injuries from training weapons. When you get hurt, you don't stop fighting. You use the pain to fight better. Captain Kyleseth, the Zephany training officer, transmitted confusion through his telepathic field. But pain indicates damage to the body. Surely the logical response is to retreat and heal? Logic gets you killed, Sunjin replied. When an enemy hurts you, you hurt them back twice as hard. If you're going to die anyway, make sure you take some of them with you. The alien soldiers exchanged glances. This philosophy made no sense to most galactic species. Individual survival was the most basic instinct in the universe. These humans seem to have it backwards, Watch Sung-jin said. He activated a training blade and deliberately cut his own arm, drawing blood. The aliens gasped in horror.
Us.
Then he smiled and switched the weapon to his other hand. Now I'm angry. Angry fighters are dangerous fighters. Private Doyan, who was helping with the training, nodded agreement. On our world, we have a saying, the cornered rat bites the cat. When you have nothing left to lose, you become the most dangerous thing in the room. The results of human training methods spread quickly through the Liberation Front. Units that had been defeated easily by Kethmoran forces began winning impossible battles. But the victories came at a cost that disturbed many alien commanders. Commander, Grixon reviewed the latest battle reports in his private quarters. The numbers were encouraging, but the methods were troubling. Human-trained units showed a 40% increase in combat effectiveness, but they also showed a complete disregard for their own safety. His door chimed, and Dr. June entered.
Us.
The human xenopsychologist carried a datapad filled with psychological evaluations. Commander, we need to talk, she said, sitting down without being invited. Another human trait that made aliens uncomfortable? The training is working, Grixon replied carefully. My forces are winning battles. Your forces are becoming more like us, Dr. June corrected. Is that what you wanted? Grixon studied the human's face. Like all her species, she showed emotion. Openly, but her eyes remained calculating. What do you mean? Fear inhibits performance? We've taught your people to ignore fear. Pain slows reaction time. We've taught them to use pain as motivation. Self-preservation instincts cause hesitation. We've taught them to value mission success over personal survival. These sound like improvements. Dr. June leaned forward. Commander, we've basically turned your soldiers into humans. The question is, do you understand what that means? Before Grixon could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Lieutenant Keldon's voice came over the intercom. All senior officers to the bridge. We've received a priority message from Kethmoran High Command. On the bridge, the main screen displayed the image of Admiral Zekthal, Supreme Commander of the Kethmoran Empire. His crystalline form flickered with what might have been uncertainty. Liberation Front leadership, he began, his voice carrying. Across space, we propose a ceasefire to discuss terms. The bridge fell silent. In 3,000 years of galactic war, the Kethmoran had never offered to negotiate with anyone. They're afraid, whispered Captain Velinara, her ghostly form shimmering with excitement. Commander Grixon looked at Dr. June, who was watching the transmission with an expression of grim satisfaction. Doctor, he asked quietly, what have you done to us? We've made you winners, she replied. The question is, are you prepared for what comes after victory? The war room on Liberation Front headquarters buzzed with nervous energy. First time in galactic history, the Kethmoran Empire was retreating. Their crystal ships, once thought invincible, were fleeing from human-led attacks across dozens of star systems. General Ji-hoon stood before a massive holographic display showing the galaxy. Red dots marked Kethmoran positions, while blue dots showed Liberation Front forces. The red was shrinking fast. Phase 1 is complete, he announced to the assembled alien commanders. All Outer Rim Kethmoran military bases have been destroyed. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. Commander Grixon studied the display with growing unease. The blue dots weren't just targeting military installations anymore. They were surrounding entire Kethmoran worlds. General, what exactly is Phase 2? He asked. Ji-hoon touched the holographic controls and the display zoomed in on a crystal. World called Kethful. Industrial targets. Power plants. Manufacturing centers. Communication networks. Food production facilities. The alien commanders fell silent. Captain Velinara's ghostly form flickered with distress. Those aren't military targets. Civilians work in those places. Civilians who build weapons for their military, replied Commander Sunwoo, the human fleet. Tactical officer, every power plant fuels their war machine. Every factory builds their ships. Every farm feeds their soldiers. Captain Telmar of the Hive Worlds clicked his mandibles in agitation. This is not warfare. This is destruction of entire civilizations. This is victory, General Jihoon said calmly. The Kethmoran ruled through total control. We're showing. Then what happens when that control is challenged? Commander Grixon felt something cold forming in his stomach. General, we started this war to free the galaxy from oppression, not to become oppressors ourselves.
Oh.
General Jihoon turned to face the alien commander. His human eyes were completely without emotion. Commander, with respect, you've been fighting. This war for 3 centuries and losing. We've been fighting for 1 year and winning. Perhaps you should trust our methods. The attack on Kethval began at dawn, ship time. Captain Haisong led the assault fleet, her human-designed ships moving with deadly precision. The Kethmoran defenders had prepared for a traditional battle, but the humans weren't interested in tradition. Instead of attacking the military bases, the human ships targeted the planet's power grid first. Without electricity, the defensive shields failed. Communication networks went dark, preventing coordination between military units. Then they hit the water treatment plants. Admiral Zekthal watched from his command ship as his homeworld was systematically destroyed. Not by overwhelming force, but by careful planning that targeted every system his people needed to survive. They're not trying to conquer us, he told his aide. They're trying to erase us. On the planet's surface, Kethmoran civilians fled their crystal cities as human bombs fell from the sky. But the bombs weren't random. Each one had been carefully chosen. To cause maximum disruption with minimum waste, Sergeant Minho led ground forces through the abandoned crystal spires. His soldiers moved with mechanical efficiency, destroying anything that could be useful to the enemy. They weren't cruel or angry, they were just thorough. Sir called Private Doyan, examining a Kethmoran data center. Should we try to capture their technology? Negative, Minho replied. Our orders are elimination, not acquisition. Burn it. Within 3 days, Kethbul was a dead world. Not because every living thing had been killed, but because every system that supported civilization had been destroyed. The Kethmoran survivors could live, but they couldn't fight. The news of Kethmoran's fall spread through the Kethmoran Empire like poison. For 3,000 years, they had been the apex predators of the galaxy. Now they were prey, and they didn't know how to handle it. Admiral Zekthal called an emergency meeting of the Imperial Council. The crystalline beings who had ruled hundreds of worlds gathered in their floating palace, their forms flickering with fear. The humans don't fight like any species we've encountered, reported General Kexton. They don't just defeat our forces. They eliminate our capacity to rebuild them. What do they want? Asked Counselor Velthera. Territory? Resources? Tribute? They want us gone? Zekthal replied. Not dead necessarily, but gone as a threat. They're not interested in ruling us. They're interested in replacing us. Council fell silent. The concept was alien to them. Every species they had conquered, they had kept alive to serve the Empire. The humans seemed to have no interest in servants. Back on the Liberation Front flagship, Dr. June studied reports from the front lines with growing concern. She had requested a private meeting with General Jihoon, but she wasn't sure he would. Listen to her warnings. General, the other species are becoming afraid of us, she reported. Not just the Kethmoran, our own allies. Jihoon reviewed casualty reports without looking up. Fear is a useful tool. They're starting to realize that we're not just fighting to free the galaxy, we're fighting to control it. Is that inaccurate? Dr. June hesitated. She had spent her career studying alien psychology, but lately she had been studying human psychology too. The results were disturbing. General, what happens when we defeat the Kethmoran completely? What happens to our allies then? For the first time, General Jihoon looked up from his reports. His smile was the most frightening thing Dr. June had ever seen. Then they'll learn the same lesson the Kethmoran are learning now, he said. That there can only be one apex species in any galaxy. 2 years after the fall of the Kethmoran Empire, Commander Grixon stood on the observation deck of his ship, staring at what used to be the crystal capital of the galaxy. The beautiful spires had been torn down and replaced with gray metal towers that looked exactly like human architecture. Even the colors were wrong. Everything was now painted in the dull grays and blacks that humans seemed to prefer. The humans have established governors on 63 former Kethmoran worlds, reported Lieutenant Keldon, reading from his datapad. They call it temporary administration for galactic stability. Grixon's mandibles clicked with bitter amusement. Temporary. It's just like the new trade taxes were temporary. Just like the military inspections were temporary. Through the viewport, massive human warships patrolled the space around the former Crystal homeworld. The ships were 3 times larger than anything the Kethmoran had ever built, and there were hundreds of them. In 2 years, human industrial capacity had exploded across the galaxy like a virus. A communication signal interrupted his dark thoughts. The view screen flickered to life, showing the face of Coordinator Jiwan, the human who had once been just. Captain Jiwan. Now he wore the uniform of the Terran Galactic Authority and spoke for all of humanity. Commander Grixon, Jiwan said with his usual polite smile. I hope you're well. I have some excellent news for your people. I'm listening. Grixon replied carefully. Conversations with humans had become dangerous things. They always sounded friendly while they tightened the chains. The Velter species has been selected for full integration into the Terran Defense Alliance. This is a great honor that recognizes your contributions to galactic peace. His blood turned cold. Integration? Your military forces will be restructured under human command for maximum efficiency. Your industrial capacity will be redirected toward galactic defense projects. Your people will receive the full protection and guidance of human leadership. And if we prefer to remain independent, Coordinator Jiwan's smile never changed, but something flickered behind his eyes. Commander, independence is a luxury that few species can afford in these dangerous times. The galaxy has many threats. Species that try to stand alone often find themselves facing those threats without allies. After the transmission ended, Grixon remained at the viewport, watching human patrol ships. The message was clear: submit or be treated as an enemy. The humans didn't conquer with armies anymore. They conquered with economics, politics, and the quiet threat of overwhelming force. On Earth, now the unofficial capital of the galaxy, Director June reviewed intelligence reports from across human space. The transition was proceeding exactly as planned. Former Liberation Front species were accepting human leadership with minimal resistance. Her office door chimed and Admiral Keong entered. The commander of the Terran Home Fleet carried himself with the confidence of someone who knew that his ships could destroy any world in the galaxy within hours. Doctor, I've been reading your latest recommendations, he said, settling into a chair. You suggest a more collaborative approach with the alien species? Yes, sir. I believe we can achieve better long-term results through partnership rather than domination. Admiral Keong pulled up a holographic display showing human fleet positions. Blue dots marked human ships stationed at every major world in the galaxy. Doctor, we didn't spend centuries crawling out of Earth's gravity well just to become junior partners with species that needed our help to survive. But, sir, we've achieved our goals. The Kethmoran are gone. The galaxy is at peace. The galaxy is at peace because we made it peaceful, Keong corrected. The moment we treat these species as equals, we create the possibility that they might challenge us someday. History teaches us that every ecosystem can only support one apex predator. Dr. June looked out her window at the orbital shipyards. Surrounding Earth, massive construction projects stretched as far as the eye could see, building ships that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever imagined. And what happens when we've eliminated all possible challenges? Then humanity will be safe forever, Admiral Kuhn replied. That's the point. Far from Earth, on a small trading station in what used to be neutral space, representatives from a dozen alien species met in secret. Captain Velinara's ghostly form flickered with nervous energy as she addressed the group. The humans are moving faster than we expected, she reported. They're demanding integration from every major species. Those who refuse are being isolated, economically and militarily. Captain Telmar of the Hive Worlds clicked his mandibles in frustration. We fought one empire for 3 centuries. Now we've created a worse one in 2 years. The irony is perfect, added Captain Kyle Seth of the Zephany. We begged them to help us fight monsters, and they did. By becoming bigger monsters.
Commander Grixon, who had traveled to the meeting in secret, spoke last. The question is, what
do we do now? The humans have ships, weapons, and industrial capacity that make the Kethmoran look primitive. We can't fight them. Maybe we don't fight them, Velinara suggested. Maybe we wait. Apex predators always fall eventually. They grow. Too confident? Too comfortable? And how long do we wait? Telmar asked. Decades? Centuries? How many generations of our people will live under human rule while we hope for their empire to collapse? The meeting ended without answers. The alien species that had once fought together for freedom now found themselves prisoners of their own. Victory. They had defeated one apex predator by creating another, and this one was smarter, more ruthless, and more patient than anything the galaxy had ever seen above them. Human ships continued their silent patrol, ensuring that the galaxy remained safe, peaceful, and firmly under human control.